All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we are embarking on a really awe-inspiring journey, tracing the physical universe from pure geometric truth all the way up to macroscopic gravity. We're going to explore the framework known as unified dynamics, and specifically, we'll be breaking down this mind-bending conceptual architecture called the dimensional translation bridge. By the end of our time together, you're going to see exactly how a fundamentally discrete quantum-level lattice actually scales up to create the continuous, smooth reality we walk around in every single day. I mean, it completely upends how we think about space-time.
Now, right out of the gate, there's a profound role that governs this entire framework. Unified dynamics operates behind an absolute epistemic firewall. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means the universe must be derived without cheating. There's no plugging in arbitrary numbers or smuggling in unearned mathematical constants just to make your equations look pretty. Everything, every single force, mass ratio, and coupling constant has to emerge necessarily from the bare structure of the theory itself. No exceptions.
And honestly, this firewall hits the nail on the head regarding the current crisis in modern physics. Historically, standard physics has relied really heavily on curve fitting. You know, taking experimental data and just tweaking the free parameters in the math until they happen to match our reality. Unified dynamics completely rejects that. It offers the ultimate parameter-free solution by mapping physical observables directly from pure, unalterable geometric and topological limits. You don't get adjustable dials here. It is an architecture of strict mathematical necessity.
Okay, Section 1, the mathematical seed. To build a universe from scratch under these incredibly strict rules, we have to start at the absolute bottom. We need a microscopic mathematical seed that relies on nothing but itself. So reality doesn't start with physical stuff. It starts with the K4 topological limit, which is pure abstract geometry. Conceptually, think of it like a simple pyramid with a triangular base, right? 4 vertices connected by all 6 possible edges. In this framework, this is the fundamental, completely dimensionless building block. It's the single primitive, discrete informational substrate. Space, time, matter, they're all generated purely by how information is transported and closed within this tiny discrete network.
And from this geometric seed, we actually extract the very parameters of our universe. The framework uses an iterated function system. Think of it as a fractal-like recursive scaling that generates a state-space dimension of exactly 192. Within that total, there is an unalterable overlap deficit of 7, which leaves us with a coherence retention of 185. Now these fractions, 185 over 192 and 7 over 192, they aren't just arbitrarily chosen. They require absolutely zero curve fitting. They are structural truths of the geometry itself, and as we'll see, they govern the scaling of the entire cosmos.
Moving on to Section 2, one empirical anchor.
But here's the real challenge, right? To translate this pristine, dimensionless math into the physical universe we can actually measure, we need a connection point. We have to ground the geometry. Unified dynamics strictly permits exactly one empirical anchor to cross that epistemic firewall we talked about, and that anchor is the Planck mass. By tying the fundamental geometric state solely to the Planck mass, the theory brilliantly grounds the pure mathematical topology into physical, real-world SI units. It basically gives the dimensionless geometry a physical scale. And crucially maintaining total mathematical discipline, you don't get a separate anchor for gravity and another for electromagnetism. You literally get just one.
Which brings us to Section 3, the scale suppression chasm.
So, as we journey up from this microscopic, matter sector anchor toward the macroscopic world of gravity, we immediately hit a massive roadblock. I just want you to let the sheer scale of this number sink in. 10 to the 46th power. If you try to directly infer the gravitational coupling from the matter sector anchor alone, you overshoot empirical gravity by approximately this ridiculous number. This is the vast mathematical chasm between the fundamental charged matter seed and the macroscopic gravity we actually observe out in the world. Now, standard physics often hides this hierarchy problem by inserting an incredibly tiny arbitrary constant. But unified dynamics, it flatly refuses to do that.
To cross this seemingly impossible void, the theory relies on what's formally documented as the dimensional translation bridge V0.3 artifact. This bridge utilizes a rigorous sequence of structural steps rather than just inventing a new decimal to make things work. First, we have the retained burden of the matter branch topology. Second, a cascade suppression mechanism through coarse graining. And third, the final emergence of the effective coupling at the macroscopic gravity scale. The missing piece wasn't another number to plug in, it was a pure structural suppression map.
Let's actually look a little closer at that second step. How does the system physically ascend this bridge? Well, it relies on a native iterated function system renormalization group flow. Okay, I know that sounds incredibly complex, but remember those k-square fractions we just discussed? They define this flow entirely. The scale dependence is naturally governed by an exact geometric beta function. Specifically, it's the natural log of 192 over 185. The system essentially coarse-grains itself, step by step, naturally and fractally scaling up, driven completely by the native geometry of the tetrahedral lattice without any outside interference whatsoever.
And the engine executing this flow, that's the Banach screening mechanism. This is where the magic, or, well, actually, the strict math, really happens. It bridges that massive 10 to the 46 scale gap using pure geometry. It employs a native rational generator, specifically 192 over 7 raised to the 32nd power multiplied by 11 over 3. It operates perfectly across exactly 32 discrete fractal iterations, combined with a mathematically rigorous 4-pi boundary projection factor derived from the topological curvature budget. Together, this entire mechanism perfectly suppresses the gravitational coupling, crossing the chasm without a single fitted parameter. Guys, it's literally pure geometry doing all the heavy lifting. Finally, Section 4, Emergent Macroscopic Gravity.
So, after crossing the dimensional translation bridge via that rigorous screening process, we finally arrive at the macroscopic scale of planets, stars, and galaxies. And arriving here completely redefines what we're actually experiencing. According to unified dynamics, macroscopic gravity isn't a separate magical pulling force. Instead, think about this. Gravity is essentially a traffic report. Matter doesn't just sit there in space, it loads the geometry. Heavy objects clog up the discrete K4 transport network, so information packets nearby have to take more steps to communicate around this congestion. That topological delay, that geometric detour tax, is precisely what we feel as space-time curvature in gravity.
And because of the incredibly rigorous mathematical journey across that bridge, the continuous spacetime described by Albert Einstein emerges flawlessly from the discrete lattice. The framework proves that Einstein's general relativity is the relaxed, coarse, isotropic limit of this underlying machine. It is absolutely vital to grasp that this is not an approximation. When you zoom out, average over the microscopic discrete fluctuations, and let the system relax, Einstein's exact field equations are the natural, completely unavoidable macroscopic output of the K4 network.
So, I want to leave you with this to ponder. We've just traced the universe from a 4-vertex abstract geometry, mapped it through a single empirical anchor, scaled it across a 46 order of magnitude chasm using fractal screening, and derived the smooth gravity that holds our feet to the ground. All of it without a single arbitrary parameter. We have literally built reality from pure math. If gravity itself is just the macroscopic blurring of a discrete geometric truth, how deeply do we need to rethink the very fabric of our reality? What other smooth, continuous illusions are hiding the granular truth of the cosmos from our eyes? Let that sink in.